So in this module, we'll be talking about methods. Well, method can be defined as a construct that groups code together, but actually there are basically two types of it. The first one is a void method, and the second type of method is known as a return type method. Now, in the handout, actually, only the void method has been treated more exclusively, so I'll be giving it much attention here. Now, in creating a void method, this is what you do. First, you use the construct public, then static, okay, then this keyword, which is void, all right, then the name of your method. Now your method can have any name you want. Let's assume we are creating a program that will add two numbers. All right, now if we are adding two numbers, it will be like a calculator, right? Then let's just call it calculator. That will be the name of our method, calculator, right? Then you open a brace here. All right, now once you open this parenthesis, not brace, or is it called a parenthesis? So after opening the parenthesis, you have to put some values here, all right, or some variables, and the variable we'll put here, these variables are called parameters. Now we have to, since we want to add two numbers, the first number and the second number, instead of putting 2 and 3, if we want to add 2 plus 3, we actually use like variable names. Let's say number 1. So since we want to put, let's say, num1, all right, num1, all right, then comma num2, right? But actually this is also a wrong way of declaring parameters, because when declaring parameters, you're actually declaring them like variables. So you have to put the data type. And now because we want to add two numbers that are integers or whole numbers, you say integer num1 and integer num2. All right, this is what we call parameters. Don't forget, these are not exclusively variables, but these are called parameters. Then you do this, then you open your brace here. Now since we want to add them together, we can just say system dot out dot print, okay, print line, then we say num1 plus num2. Okay, then we'll put a semicolon, meaning that this is a statement, then we close it. Now as you can see, this, we have now created a method, and this method is for doing what? This method is for adding two numbers. Now that we created this method, the method does nothing. Actually, we have to call the method, and now in calling a method, you only call method in your own main method. Don't forget this thing: method begin execution at the main method, or all your statements begin execution at your main method. Now to call this method, we have to create what? A main method, your normal main method. Of course, we taught us earlier, how do you create your main method? You do it this way. After you creating your public class, right? Public class, let's see, what's the name of your program? It could be anything. Let's just call it Cal. All right, open brace here, then you create your main method, public class, no, public static void main, right? Your string, then args, right? This way you open this brace. Now if what you want to have to do here is to call your main method. If you want to call another method you've created, like this calculator, to do it you have to do this. You say calculator, all right, then you open this parenthesis, and now you have to pass values into this method. And what you want to have to put here, what we put here is called arguments, the values you put here. Let's say you want to add 2 plus 3, right? Now you now say 2 comma 3 comma, then close it. So what happens here is that these 2 will be assigned to num1, and this 3 will be assigned to num2. Then it will add it up like 2 plus 3, then it will return the value here. Hope you're understanding. Okay, what it does when calling a method, you start by using the method name, the name of the method, which is calculator. You open parenthesis, and since we've declared two parameters here, you now put arguments. What we put here in argument, when calling a method you put arguments, when creating a method you put parameters. Then you put the first value, then it will be assigned to num1. Put the second value, it will be assigned to num2. All right, then it will add it up and bring the value here. So what you're essentially doing is that you are calling a method, and when you put this statement, the call for the method is transferred back to this point. Hope you understand. So next, let's use another scenario. Okay, let's say you want to create a program. This is a much more complex program. You want to create a program that, for example, will print let's say your name. All right, now to do that, you have to create a method for it, a method that will print your name. Let's create a method and call it public static void, then let's say your name. That's your name of your method, your name. All right, then we'll open brace here. Now, since if you want to print your name, I know your name. Let's assume I want to print my name, which is Johnson, right? Now, my name is not a number. My name is a letter. Now, letters are of which type? As I told you earlier, letters are of type string. So you say string name. You can't put int name or int or double name, because double is not a number. Double is not a number. Name is not a number. Name is a letter. And since name is a letter, we use string for letters. Then you say system dot out dot print name. All right. So now we have now created another method for printing our name. Now let's come to our main method. Let's assume this is our main method, right? Now, if you want to call this method, you say your name, then open this parenthesis and put anything you want. Let's assume Johnson. All right. Now what happens is that this is an argument, this is a parameter. This is a parameter, this is an argument. When you create a method, you use parameters. When you are calling a method, you use arguments. Now, this Johnson is now assigned to this name here. Then it is printed. Because when you assign Johnson to this name, what happens that your computer is not seeing name, but it's seeing Johnson. Then it prints Johnson in this place. Hope you're getting it. So at this point, I think we are now done with basically void methods. Now let's go to return type methods. Don't forget, this one wasn't exclusively taught in the class, but I'll just do it for the sake of doing so. Now for return type method, these are type of method that return a value. Next, now let's show you how we create it. In creating return type methods, what you do first, you start by, it's just like the void method, but there's a very basic difference. Let's say public. All right, public static. All right, then now instead of putting void, all right, you put a return type. Now, for return types, you can either use integer, you can either use double, or any kind of thing. Now, let's assume we want to create a method, all right, that will return the age of a person, Now, don't forget, age is a whole number, which is an integer, right? So you put int instead of void, all right? Then you put, let's say the name of our method is age, then put age, open parenthesis. Let's say you want to ask the user his age, right? So you say integer, the name of our parameter age, right? Close the parenthesis, open your braces, then we say return age. Now, don't forget, I never use system.out.println age for a reason. When you are using a return type method, a method with a return type, you must put the return keyword. You just don't put void and come and put, let's assume this is a void here, and you put return, it will give you a syntax error. Okay, it will give you a syntax error. But now that we have put int, okay, and we'll put return age, it will not bring out an error. But let's assume we neglected this return and press system.out.print age, it will bring out an error. Hope you're understanding. A return type method must have a return keyword. Now let's assume this is our main. Let's get our main method here, all right? Now, so that we don't spend much time, I won't create the main method. I'll just assume it has been created, okay? Now, in calling this age method, if you want to call it, do you know how you do it? You just don't write age as we did earlier and put 12. This will print. In fact, it will print a very real error. Do you know what type of error it will print? It will print a syntax error. Most of the times, the type of errors we experience in a program are basically syntax error. So here is a tip. If, let's say, in your exam, maybe the the teacher brings out a question and asks you what type of error it is, if you are not sure of the type of error, I will advise you to put syntax error, because most errors encountered in a computer program are syntax error. I'm not saying for every question you put syntax error, just in case you don't know what the answer is, I would go with syntax error. All right, now how to call a method with a return type. This is how you do it. You have to create a variable first. Let's create a variable. We have to create a variable in the main method. I'm assuming this is my main method. Don't forget, you only call a method in the main method, and execution begins at a main method. Execution doesn't begin at a method you create by yourself. It only begins at the main method. All right, so let's say this is your main method, and you know how to create a main method, right? Public static void main string args. Okay, now let's create this variable. Let's assume the variable is age. Let's say age store. Instead of using age, I'll just use age store. So if you do, what you do is put equal to the name of the method, open brace, put 12. Do you know what happens at this stage? If the computer encounters this, it will now transfer this value of 12 down to the age method. After transferring the value, then it will return the age, which is 12, back here. Then it will store it in age. Now at this point, you have to say system.out.print line age store. So what it does is that it will take this value of 12 and store it here. Then this program says return age. Then it will bring back the age here, which is 12, and store it a store. Then we can print it. All right. So I know this is basically very hard, but if you read the handout to basically understand it, or just replay this very clip over and over again, and you get a very good understanding of it. So without further ado, I think we'll be going to array. Okay, array are just like variables, but unlike variables, in variables you can't store more than one value, right? For example, let's say in a variable, let's say you want to create a variable that will store all the names of students in our class. All right, now since the names of students are strings or are letters, the type is string, right? So we say string names, right, of students, names of students, right? Do you know you can't store all the names of students in this string? How would you do it if you are going to do it? That means let's say we are about 19 in our class. That means you start by storing Johnson. All right, give space and store Philip, perhaps. Give space and maybe store Felix. It will be very, very long and it won't even make sense. All right. Now, that's the purpose of array. Array allows you to store any kind of value. It can allow you to store strings. It can allow you to store integers, allow you to store double values. All right. Now, in doing that, in creating an array, this is how we do. Let's assume we want to store all the students in our class, their names. What we do at this point is this. First, you have to know the type of values you want to store. You want to store strings, right? Then you say string. Then use this symbol. All right, string. Then what is the name of your array? Let's say the name of our array is names. All right. Then you say okay. Then that's it. Then you say equal to. All right. Then you say string. No, then use new keyword. Sorry, is the new keyword. Are you understanding me? Then use the new keyword. Then you say string. Then you open the bracket and you put the size. Do you know what size means? That means the number of students. Say assuming we have 90 students, then you put 90. 90, that's it. Next. The next thing at this point is to assign values to this array. We have, of course, 90 students. Now, at this point, you have to tell us, okay, before I move on, you have to understand something, that in Java, counting begins at 0. You don't start counting in Java, or basically in computers, you don't start counting from 1, 2, 3, all right? You start counting from 0, from 1, from 2, down to perhaps 76. Okay, you start counting from 0 down to the last number. Okay, so at this point, what we'll do now is to store the names. Now, in storing the names, this is the convention you use. You use the name of the array name. All right, then you say at this index, or at this position 0, we want you to store the first name. Let's assume the first name is Fatima. You say Fatima. Assuming we have 90 students, now I want to occupy the entire array with the name of the students. At the first index or at the first position 0, we say Fatima. We can't start with 1, we only start with 0, right? Now let's assume the second student in the class, maybe that started registering, is at the index 1, right? Let's say we call it Felix, assuming. Okay, and at this point, that's how we continue until we reach maybe name and position 6. Is it 69? No, it should be 89. 89. Let's assume the last person in our class has a name Zoo. Let's say ZU. Zoo, right? Now I know you might be probably confused. You might be thinking, okay, why not say that the last person in the class will have an index of 90? No, don't forget, as I said earlier, when you start counting from 0, you count from 0 actually to the last number, but you exclude the last number. That means since we have 90 students, we count from 0 to 69. But if you count from 0 to from 0 to 89, when you count from 0 to 89, is it not 90? Well, it's 90, right? So you don't say that you want to store the 90th student, because if you are trying to store the 90th student, like 90 like this, and maybe you put Zulaiha or whatever name you put, right? If you try to do that, it will result in an error. This is also a syntax error, or rather, it's an array. The actual error is an array out of bounds error. But you don't need to know it. But perhaps if it's asked, you should know that it generates an index out of bounds error. Okay, so this is how you assign values to it. Let's say you've assigned up to 69 or 7, up to, let's say, 90 values. Okay, what if you want to access it? Let's say you want to know the 20th students. All right, what you do is that you say name. Okay, you say system dot out dot print name. All right, then you give us the index. Let's say you want to know who the 20th student in the class is, then say 20. Now let's assume, okay, the 20th student in the class, let's assume we assign the 20th student in the class to be Johnson or John, just for simplicity is John. When you say name 20, the computer will print an output of John. Okay, let's say you want to know who the first person in the class is. You say system dot out dot print, all right, print line. Okay, you now say name. Now who will be the first person in the class? Actually, it's not 1. You put 0. Don't forget I said computer start counting at 0, right? Then the computer will now print Fatima. Don't forget, here we initialize that and say that the first person in the class, which is 0, is Fatima. Now we are trying to print this person is now name 0 will be Fatima. All right, so this is how your course. If you want to print the last person in the class, it will be this name 89. So we say system.out.print. Okay, if you say name 89, okay, the answer will be Zoo. So don't forget, of course, this is how to create an array. For simplicity's sake, first thing you have to do is to assign the size of the array. After assigning the size of the array, first of all, you have to assign the values of the array. Then at this point, after assigning the values to the array, you can now start executing your array, or for example, you start printing whatever is in your array. Alright, here comes the end of our tutorial. Thank you very much for your time. Wish you best in your exams. If you feel you like this video, why not give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to our channel. You can also always contact me if you do have the opportunity. We'll see you in the exam hall. Goodbye.